Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are today's top stories.
United Healthcare CEO murder suspect Luigi Mangione appears in a New York courthouse, how he pleads to the 11 state charges, and what comes next.
The House Ethics Committee releases its report on former Congressman Matt Gaetz, what it finds and how he's responding.
President Joe Biden today commutes most federal death row sentences to life in prison. This just weeks before Trump takes office.
Honda and Nissan are in talks to merge in a historic pivot for Japan's auto industry. What role did China play?
Baseball star Shohei Ohtani was named the AP's Male Athlete of the Year today for the third time in his career, putting him in select company.
Shen Performing Arts has started its 2025 World Tour with audience members around the world eagerly awaiting their return. Some fans shared why they're so excited for the show.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Today is Monday, December 23rd. I'm Stephanie Cox.
And I'm Don Ma.
Luigi Mangione, the suspect in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, appeared in a New York courthouse earlier this morning.
He was arraigned and pleaded not guilty to state charges.
Mangione leaned into a microphone and said not guilty when asked how he pleaded to the 11-count indictment. It includes 3 murder charges, one of which is a murder as an act of terrorism. If convicted, he faces a maximum sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Today's arraignment was the second court appearance in New York for Mangione. He also faces a 4-count federal criminal complaint charging him with stalking and killing Thompson. He has not yet been asked to enter a plea to those charges. The next court date has been set for February 21st.
President Joe Biden is taking 37 people off federal death row.
The president announced today he was commuting their sentences to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
The majority of these individuals were convicted for low-profile offenses, such as murders tied to drug trafficking or killing prison guards or other inmates. Only 3 federal prisoners will be awaiting execution when President-elect Donald Trump takes office. They include Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, one of 2 brothers responsible for the deadly Boston Marathon bombing in 2013, Dylan Roof, who killed 9 people at a historically black church in Charleston, South Carolina, in 2015, that is, and Robert Bowers, who killed 11 worshipers at Pittsburgh's Tree of Life Synagogue in 2018.
The White House said the 37 inmates will have their sentences reclassified. Biden said in a statement, quote, "Make no mistake, I condemn these murderers, grieve for the victims of their despicable acts, and ache for all the families who have suffered unimaginable and irreparable loss." But he said he is more convinced than ever that the use of the death penalty at the federal level must be stopped.
President-elect Donald Trump spoke at a Turning Point USA event yesterday. This was his first rally address since winning the election back in November. NTD's Fiona G has the highlights.
Donald J. Trump.
President-elect Donald Trump addressed the crowd on the 4th and final day of America Fest 2024 in Phoenix, Arizona. He spoke of his plans for his first day back in office.
I will sign executive orders to end child sexual mutilation, get transgender out of the military and out of our elementary schools and middle schools and high school. To rescue our economy, I will sign day 1 orders to end all Biden restrictions on energy production, terminate his insane electric vehicle mandate, cancel his natural gas export ban, reopen Anwar in Alaska, the biggest site potentially anywhere in the world, and declare a national energy emergency. And I'll end all of the Marxist diversity, equity, and inclusion policies across the entire federal government immediately. And at the same time, we will ban these unlawful policies from we're going to ban them from the private sector as well.
Trump praised many of his cabinet and administration picks, including Pam Bondi, Tulsi Gabbard, and Tom Homan. He invited supporters on stage during his speech, including Texas Senator Ted Cruz and Patty Morin, the mother of murdered mother of 5 Rachel Morin. Trump also touched on his plans for America's military, as well as the Panama Canal.
I will direct our military to begin construction of the great Iron Dome missile defense shield, which will be made all in the USA, much of it right here in Arizona. If the principles, both moral and legal, of this magnanimous gesture of giving are not followed, then we will demand that the Panama Canal be returned to the United States of America in full, quickly, and without question.
Trump also announced that he would rename Denali, North America's tallest mountain, after the 25th U.S. President William McKinley. The mountain had previously been called Mount McKinley before being renamed by then-President Barack Obama in 2015.
McKinley was a very good, maybe a great president. They took his name off Mount McKinley, right? President McKinley was the president that was responsible for creating a vast sum of money in the United States that Teddy Roosevelt then spent. So let's say they were both excellent presidents, but McKinley did that, and that's one of the reasons that we're going to bring back the name of Mount McKinley.
God bless you all.
Trump ended his speech by promising to restore the American promise. Fiona G., NTD News.
President-elect Trump promises to expose corruption in what he calls the deep state. He plans to create a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Our legal correspondent Arlene Richards explores how he will expose corruption and how the commission may work.
President-elect Trump has promised to expose abuses of power in our government.
To expose the hoaxes and abuses of power that have been tearing our country apart, we will establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to declassify and publish all documents on deep state spying, censorship, and corruption. And there are plenty of them.
He promises to declassify the remaining files surrounding the assassination of John F. Kennedy. This isn't the first time Trump has promised to release confidential documents. In 2018, then-President Trump ordered the release of some documents from the DOJ's Russia investigation, including 20 pages of a surveillance application that targeted his former campaign advisor, Carter Page. At that time, he told The Hill he hoped declassifying all of the documents would become one of his crowning achievements. Then, in 2020, near the end of his term, Trump posted on social media that he authorized the total declassification of any and all documents pertaining to the single greatest political crime in American history, the Russia hoax. Likewise, the Hillary Clinton email scandal, no redactions. 2 weeks later, his then chief of staff, Mark Meadows, said in a court filing that Trump didn't mean it, and that he was only giving his attorney general permission to declassify documents for his own intelligence investigation. The Constitution gives the president broad powers to classify and declassify documents. This is commonly done through executive orders. As president, Trump will have the power to declassify large batches of documents. How will he do it? In 2022, Trump said he declassified documents that he stored in his Mar-a-Lago residence. He told Fox News this.
It doesn't have to be a process, as I understand it. You know, there's different people say different things, but as I understand, there doesn't have to be. If you're the president of the United States, you can declassify just by saying it's declassified, even by thinking about it.
Many legal experts have said there's a process before declassification is final. The American Bar Association said in an article that legal precedent confirms there has to be a formal procedure, even if the president signs an executive order. Now, Trump has proposed a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to carry out the declassifications. Presumably, the commission will find the targeted documents and then follow all of the necessary procedures. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
And Trump says he plans to nominate Callista Gingrich as U.S. ambassador to Switzerland.
She's the wife of former House Speaker Newt Gingrich.
Gingrich served as U.S. ambassador to the Vatican during Trump's first presidency. Trump released a statement on social media yesterday praising Gingrich's previous experience.
He said, in part, Gingrich worked to advance and defend international religious freedom, combat human trafficking, and provide humanitarian assistance around the world.
Trump also said he would nominate Mauricio Claver-Carone to serve as his special envoy to Latin America. Claver-Carone served in the Trump administration during his first White House term. Trump said Claver-Carone would help address migration and drug smuggling issues. The president-elect said on social media that, quote, Mauricio knows the region and how to put America's interests first.
Claver-Carone was fired in 2022 as head of the Inter-American Development Bank. That was after an investigation that found he had an intimate relationship with a staffer. He denied having an affair. He was the first American to serve as the head of the bank. Police arrested a man they said set a woman on fire while she appeared to be sleeping on a New York City subway train yesterday morning, killing her.
It was just before 7:30 this morning when our person of interest and the victim were both riding an F train to the end of the line at Stillwell Avenue in Brooklyn. As the train pulled into the station, the suspect calmly walked up to the victim, who was in a seated position at the end of a subway car. The suspect used what we believe to be a lighter to ignite the victim's clothing, which became fully engulfed in a matter of seconds. Officers who were on patrol on an upper level of that station smelled and saw smoke and went to investigate. What they saw was a person standing inside the train car, fully engulfed in flames. With the help of an MTA employee and a fire extinguisher, the flames were put out. Unfortunately, it was too late, and the victim was pronounced on the scene.
Police arrested a suspect who has not been publicly identified. 3 high school students called 911 saying they recognized him from the photos released by the NYPD. Police are still investigating the victim's identity and the reason for the attack.
Authorities in Texas say a pickup truck driver fleeing police crashed through the doors of a JCPenney store. 5 people were injured before law enforcement officers fatally shot the driver. A dashcam video caught the end of a 19-mile police chase right before the suspect drove into the busy mall. Police at the mall traded gunfire with the suspect, whose identity was not immediately released. Witnesses say they heard multiple gunshots and saw people fleeing through the mall. The victims are being treated at local hospitals, and their condition is not immediately known. Developing now, the House Ethics Committee released its long-awaited report on former Congressman Matt Gaetz.
This comes moments after Gaetz filed a restraining order in an effort to block the report earlier this morning.
The report says it found evidence that Gaetz regularly paid women for sex during his time in office, including to a 17-year-old girl. He also used illegal drugs, including cocaine and ecstasy, received improper gifts, and sought to obstruct the committee's investigation. The report concludes that the Florida Republican violated House rules and state and federal laws, including laws on prostitution and statutory rape.
Gaetz filed a complaint earlier in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. He claimed the committee is violating its own rules by exercising jurisdiction over a private citizen. And he said the release of the report is, quote, an unprecedented overreach that threatens fundamental constitutional rights. Gaetz today responded to the report with several posts on X of testimonies from the women involved who denied it was prostitution.
Coming up, the Biden administration launches an investigation on Chinese legacy chips. The probe could be carried into the Trump administration.
Hyundai and Nissan are in talks to merge in a historic pivot for Japan's auto industry. What role did China play? That and more after the break. For today's Business Matters, Biden launches an investigation into Chinese-made legacy chips. The Container Store filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Russia calls gas sales to Europe complicated. And drivers may get the cheapest Christmas gas prices since 2020. Starting off, the Biden administration announced a last-minute trade investigation into Chinese-made legacy semiconductors. Legacy chips use older manufacturing processes and are found in a wide range of mass market applications. The findings could lead to more U.S. tariffs on China with chips. The probe will be handed over to the Trump administration in January. The U.S. Trade Representative's office said the investigation is aimed at protecting American and other chip producers from China's massive state-driven supply of domestic chips. The agency found evidence that Beijing is targeting the semiconductor industry for global domination. Now, the Container Store has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It's the latest retailer impacted by customers cutting back on discretionary spending. The 46-year-old company is $230 million in debt and has nearly $12 million in cash on hand. Thanks to the filing, it will receive $40 million in fresh financing. In a statement, the Container Store said bankruptcy protection will help bolster its financial position, fuel growth initiatives, and drive enhanced long-term profitability. The retailer's 102 locations and website will remain open for orders during the process. Russia says the situation with European countries that buy its gas via transport through Ukraine is complicated and needs attention. That's after the president of Slovakia spoke with the president of Russia. Slovakia, Italy, Australia, and the Czech Republic will be most affected if any gas deal ends. The flow through Ukraine accounts for around half of Russia's total pipeline gas exports to Ukraine, to Europe that is. Meanwhile, Ukraine has said it will not be renewing its 5-year transit deal for Russian gas to Europe. The deal is set to expire at the end of the year. Ukraine's president said last week it might be possible to renew the gas transit deal, but only on the condition that Russia is not paid for the gas until after the war is over. Chief executive officers have exited from U.S. companies in 2024 at a greater pace than ever before, with businesses increasingly opting to appoint interim leaders as replacements. A report from global outplacement company Challenger Gray & Christmas says as of November, almost 2,000 CEOs left their companies. The report says it's the highest yearly total on record. The government said nonprofit sector saw the highest number of CEO exits. California topped the list with 223 departing CEOs. Besides just stepping down, some of the top reasons CEOs gave for leaving included retirement, pursuing new opportunity, or transitioning to a different position within the company. As millions of Americans hit the road for Christmas, they can expect a special gift at the gas station. Drivers will likely be greeted at the pump with the cheapest Christmas Day gas prices since 2020. Gas Buddy, an app that crowdsources pump prices, expects a national average of $3.01 a gallon on Wednesday. That's a modest dip from the $3.10 last year. Still, it's more than the cost of fuel before COVID. The national average on Christmas Day in 2019 was $2.54. A historic turnaround for Japan's auto industry. Honda and Nissan are in talks to merge by 2026. Both companies cited the threat of Chinese electric vehicle makers posing to the world's long dominant legacy car makers. Here's a closer look.
A historic pivot for Japan's auto industry is underway. Honda and Nissan announced on Monday that they have started talks towards a potential merger. The move underlines the threat Chinese EV makers now pose to some of the world's heavyweight car makers. The integration would create the world's third largest auto group by vehicle sales after Toyota and Volkswagen, and would also give Nissan and Honda a chance to share resources in the face of intense competition. The companies also announced that smaller Mitsubishi, in which Nissan is top shareholder, was also considering joining. The chief executives of all three held a press conference in Tokyo. Honda CEO Toshihiro Mibe.
There is a rise of Chinese power and emerging forces, and the structure of the automobile industry is changing. What this means is that I believe that the value itself in terms of automobiles and mobility will change. Ultimately, we would like to lead the world once again. And you can think that today's discussion is the first step in consideration towards that direction.
Honda is Japan's second largest automaker and Nissan is its number 3. A deal would mark the biggest reshaping in the global auto industry since Fiat Chrysler and PSA merged in 2021 to create Stellantis. The two companies said they'd aim to wrap up talks around June 2025 and then set up a holding company by August 2026. Honda has a market capitalization of more than $40 billion, while Nissan is valued at about $10 billion. Honda said it will appoint the majority of the holding company's board. In a separate online press conference with the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan on Monday, former Nissan chairman Carlos Ghosn gave his reaction to the news. He said he did not believe the Honda-Nissan alliance would be successful and that the two automakers were not complementary. Ghosn is wanted as a fugitive in Japan for jumping bail and fleeing to Lebanon. His 2018 arrest for financial wrongdoing threw Nissan into crisis.
And just a note on a previous story about gas deal between Russia and European countries. If it ends, the most affected countries will be Italy, Austria, and the Czech Republic.
And coming up, updates on the German Christmas market attack, what is now known about the suspect, and what was known before the attack.
Ukraine says North Korean soldiers were found carrying fake Russian identification with fake Russian names.
And Australia approved a U.S. extradition request for a former U.S. Marine pilot. He faces charges of illegally training Chinese military pilots. I'm Stephanie Cox, and this is World Watch. A ship rolls onto its side at an Istanbul airport. Germany mourns the Christmas market attack and looks at what could have been done to prevent it. The French president said a new government will have to wait. Ukraine says it found North Korean soldiers posing as Russians. First up, Germany is searching for possible security lapses after a man drove his car into a Christmas market. He killed at least 5 people. The suspect is a 50-year-old psychiatrist from Saudi Arabia. The motive remains unknown. He left video messages on his X account on the day of the attack. In the videos, he blamed Germany for the death of Socrates and accused police of stealing a USB stick from him and destroying a criminal complaint he had filed. A newspaper said he had undergone psychological treatment. The tragedy cast a spotlight on security and immigration ahead of an election. The president of Germany's federal police says Saudi Arabia warned Germany about the suspect as far back as 2023. A local hospital said it was still treating 72 injured people. 15 are in severe condition. The president of France says a new government will not be announced before this evening. It's to take part in a day of mourning for cyclone-hit Mayotte. The delay prolongs France's political uncertainty. Mayotte is a part of France that's not on France's mainland. It's off the coast of Southeast Africa. The French president said the cyclone might have killed hundreds or even thousands. Incoming French Prime Minister François Bayrou has struggled for almost 10 days to put together a government. He hopes to avoid a vote of no confidence and ensure Parliament agrees on a budget before 2025. Ukraine says it has found fake documents that attempt to represent North Korean soldiers as Russian soldiers. Kyiv says this is an attempt to conceal the fact that Russia is using North Korean soldiers in the war. Intelligence estimates put the number of North Korean soldiers in Russia between 11 and 12,000. Some of them fought Ukraine's forces in Russia's Kursk region. A South Korean lawmaker said around 100 North Korean soldiers are believed to have been killed and nearly 1,000 injured after being deployed to Russia's Kursk region. A Ukrainian unit says the North Korean soldiers appear to be using 70-year-old tactics. 70 years ago was around the time of the Korean War. Crew members narrowly escaped a ship as it rolled over on its side at a port in Istanbul today. CCTV footage from the scene shows the ship rolled on its side because of an imbalanced loading of the cargo. The governor's office said 10 of the 15 crew members were rescued by aid personnel, and 5 jumped into the water and got away by themselves. It appeared that one person who was lightly injured was transferred to hospital. The Russian Investigative Committee said 15 people were injured in a car crash in Moscow late yesterday. CCTV footage shows a bus colliding with a fire truck, which was crossing the intersection on a red light, but with emergency lights turned on. After the collision, the fire truck careened into several other cars that were waiting at the traffic light. 3 bus passengers walked away after falling out of the bus. President-elect Donald Trump threatened to take back the Panama Canal after accusing Panama of ripping off the U.S. and saying he's worried about China's growing influence. Let's dive in.
We will demand that the Panama Canal be returned to the United States of America.
President-elect Donald Trump threatening to take back the Panama Canal, a man-made waterway in South America that the U.S. depends on for transporting goods and military. The U.S. built it in the early 1900s and maintained control of it. But President Jimmy Carter transferred control of it to Panama in 1977 to improve relations with Latin America. Now Trump says Panama is ripping off the United States.
Our Navy and commerce have been treated in a very unfair and injudicious way. The fees being charged by Panama are ridiculous, highly unfair, especially knowing the extraordinary generosity that has been bestowed.
Trump also brought up China.
It was solely for Panama to manage and not for China or any other country to manage. You see what's going on there? China.
China is the canal's second largest user behind the U.S., and it's been expanding its influence there by investing in Panama's mining rights, developing infrastructure, and creating Spanish-language CCP media. A Hong Kong-based firm gained control of 2 out of 5 ports surrounding the canal. In 2017, Panama switched its diplomatic relations from Taiwan to the Chinese Communist Party. A year later, it joined China's Belt and Road Initiative, a CCP plan for growing its influence largely by investing in other countries' infrastructure. U.S. military leaders are concerned about Chinese projects along the canal. That's because Chinese firms are subject to CCP control.
Panama's president yesterday rejected Trump's suggestion that his new administration could try to regain control of the Panama Canal.
A short time after Trump's speech, the president of Panama released a video declaring that every square meter of the canal belongs to Panama and will continue to belong to his country. He added that Panama respects other nations and demands respect as well. Next, Australia's Attorney General approved the extradition of a former U.S. Marine pilot today. The pilot is facing multiple charges in the U.S., including one for illegally training Chinese soldiers. Daniel Duggan is a naturalized Australian citizen. The U.S. government accuses him of training Chinese pilots to land on aircraft carriers between 2010 and 2012, while he was still a U.S. citizen. The training is in violation of U.S. arms control law. His lawyers have argued that he was no longer a U.S. citizen during the trainings. Duggan reportedly received at least $100,000 in exchange for his services. Next, Duggan will face prosecution in the U.S. His case comes as the U.S. and its allies tighten the controls on military pilots to prevent Chinese from accessing sensitive defense knowledge.
Coming up, a NASA solar probe explores the sun's outer atmosphere. The spacecraft is set to achieve a stellar milestone on Christmas Eve.
In the Czech mountains, a traditional art form is still alive. Their centuries-old technique creates intricate decorations that capture the holiday spirit.
Shen Performing Arts has started its 2025 World Tour, with audience members around the world eagerly awaiting their return. Some fans shared why they're so excited for the show. More on that after the break.
Welcome back, and now for your sports news, we're joined here by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, good to have you here. How are you doing?
I am doing well, Don. How are you?
I'm doing well as well. Let's start at the NFL, because we had a big weekend here. The NFL, as the Philadelphia Eagles lost to the Washington Commanders, snapping their 10-game winning streak. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it was costly, actually, for several reasons. One, their star quarterback, Jalen Hurts, actually suffered a concussion in the first quarter, missed the rest of the game. Now, his replacement, Kenny Pickett, also got injured. That was later in the game. He was able to stay in. That was a rib injury. But I mean, we're 2 games away from the playoffs. This is not the time you want to be, possibly without your top 2 quarterbacks, of course. Now, had they actually won this game, though, it would have clinched the division title, and they would have stayed in contention for the top seed in the NFC. That didn't happen, though. The Commanders beat them. Now, they can still clinch the division title next week, but the top seed in the playoffs is going to be tough. I mean, Detroit has a 1-game lead over them, plus they have the tie break. So really, Detroit would have to lose their final 2 games. The Eagles would have to win their 2. I think Minnesota is actually right behind Detroit, too. So they would need a lot of help at getting that top seed. And the top seed is important because that is the only seed that gets a bye in the first round of the playoffs. But it's still possible.
Well, it's a pretty tight race as you paint it, but it does seem like the Commanders are doing their best to shatter the mindset of the Eagles, at least on Twitter, trolling them, putting out some pretty
with the big L in the Eagles.
Pointed attacks or making fun of
That was a clever one.
Okay. Well, shifting gears, Dave, the college football playoffs, all 4 home teams won over the weekend. What were some of your biggest takeaways on that?
I just loved seeing these games being on a neutral site. They were on the campus site. It seems to add a lot more excitement to the game than those neutral big dome stadiums they normally play these big games in. Of course, all 4 games were blowouts. I mean, that was surprising. I thought Indiana would beat Notre Dame. Instead, the Irish dominated them really from the start. Indiana did get a couple of late scores there. Then on Saturday, another dominating win by Penn State over SMU. Then in Texas, they really didn't have to sweat too much against Clemson. That was at least a closer game. And then finally, I think the game that we all thought might be the closest, Ohio State-Tennessee. Ohio State came out strong, scored the first 21 points, really never looked back. Now, they really looked like they were kind of angry and maybe kind of resolved from that end of the season loss where they lost to their big rival, Michigan, at home by like 3 points. But anyway, the second round is going to start next week, New Year's Eve. You got Boise State, Penn State, and we got a triple header on New Year's Day. That's going to be Texas versus Arizona State, Ohio State versus Oregon, which is going to be a rematch from their game earlier this year where Oregon beat them by a point. And then finally Notre Dame versus Georgia. In the meantime, though, we've got a bunch of bowl games coming up for the next week here.
Well, Dave, can we also talk about baseball news and my new favorite player, Shohei Ohtani, over here, named the AP's Male Athlete of the Year for the 3rd time in his career. What did you make of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I thought they got it right. I like how he's your favorite athlete now, just like Steph Curry has become too. You're really getting into the sport thing. But anyway, I thought they got this right. Swimmer Leon Marchand of France, who won 4 golds at the Olympics, he finished 2nd in the voting. Golfer Scotty Scheffler finished 3rd after winning the Masters and winning an Olympic gold. I'm actually a little surprised Aaron Judge wasn't a little higher on this list. At least batting-wise, he might have edged Ohtani, but Ohtani got him on a base pass, stealing 59 bases in addition to his 54 home runs, being the first player ever to get into the 50-50 club there. Plus, his Dodgers won the World Series over Aaron Judge's Yankees, so it was quite a year. I mean, imagine how good he can be next year when he's finally able to pitch again. He wasn't able to pitch again with that arm injury this year. Anyway, for Ohtani, he enters some very select company. Only Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Lance Armstrong, and Tiger Woods have won the AP Male Athlete of the Year more times each, 4 times each. So very impressive for Ohtani. If he can pitch next year, maybe he wins it again.
It is. He is bringing in a lot of money for his team and also new sets of audience members. I'm hearing that he's getting obviously a lot more attention from Japanese viewers than they would have had before.
For sure. They are very attuned into Shohei Ohtani playing for the Dodgers there. So it really brings in a whole lot more fans really for Major League Baseball here.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Dave.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Next, NASA's Parker Solar Probe is on a groundbreaking mission to explore the sun's outer atmosphere. Launched in 2018, the spacecraft is set to achieve a milestone Christmas Eve by flying closer to the sun than any man-made object in history. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on the mission.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
NASA's Parker Solar Probe launched from Cape Canaveral, Florida in 2018 on a mission to explore the sun's outer atmosphere, the corona. The mission is helping unlock the mysteries of our closest star in our solar system.
If you think about the Earth and the sun being on a meter stick, we're actually getting within 4 centimeters of the sun on that edge.
The Parker Solar Probe is on a 7-year mission, completing 24 orbits of the Sun.
So this is a fundamental question that drives not only how this star works, our Sun, but actually all the stars in the universe.
The spacecraft will approach within 3.8 million miles of the Sun's surface, closer than ever before. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And in a workshop in a village in the Czech mountains, artisans create delicate Christmas decorations and ornaments with glass beads. They use a technique that goes back more than a century. Check it out.
The traditional method of producing the beads by heating and blowing air into delicate glass tubes has been practiced in the village of Punicula since the 1870s.
We are the last company in the world which produces Christmas ornaments from blown glass beads. The production has a very long tradition. Here in Punicula, the first glass blower came to this village in the 70s of the 19th century, and the tradition still continues in the families during the generations in Punicula.
The process of making these glass beads is labor-intensive and lengthy.
We start with blowing of glass beads from a glass tube, then we silver them, we color them, we decorate them, and then we cut them into single pieces. And the last step is the assembly of the ornament.
The process of making the beads by hand was added to the UNESCO list of intangible cultural heritage in 2020.
In 2020, the Perling craft was inscribed on the UNESCO list of intangible cultural heritage. One of the reasons why it was included is that, to this day, our employees work at home.
The company has a workshop where they send materials to workers at home. They work on it and return the finished product to the company.
The Christmas season has arrived in the Croatian capital as the city celebrates the start of Advent with a winter festival. Tens of thousands of twinkling bulbs turn its historic buildings into eye-catching light installations. Let's take a look.
Twinkling lights are draped over trees and buildings in Zagreb's historic center for its 15th annual Advent festival. The mayor lights the first candle of Advent on a huge wreath that surrounds a city fountain.
I expect that we will have a wonderful Advent festival, and I believe that the people of Zagreb will once again be good hosts to all of our guests.
Advent is the 4 weeks before Christmas that is celebrated by Christians. Last year, the capital of Croatia, Zagreb, attracted more than 120,000 international visitors.
This is a time of merriment and big crowds in Zagreb. All around us we see happy faces, big and small. This is a truly beautiful time of year, a beautiful moment when our Advent festival in Zagreb begins.
Food makers set up stalls around the city. The best sellers include a traditional Croatian Christmas dessert, resembling small donuts served with a wide variety of toppings.
I am eating Zagreb frichul. I took the ones with cinnamon and caramel, and they are very tasty. They are excellent.
Frichul are excellent, as you can see from the length of the queue and the number of servings we are selling.
One of the most popular attractions is the pop-up outdoor ice rink in the city center. A performance of the Nutcracker Ballet on ice marks the opening of the festival.
We in Zagreb are immensely proud of our Advent festival and our ice rink. For us, this is a period of cheerfulness, socializing, a positive energy, and relaxation.
International visitors join the locals on the streets.
I am very happy because it was my dream that come here in Zagreb.
It is wonderful. The city is prettily decorated, full of tourists. I like that a lot. It makes me feel fulfilled.
The festival began on the last day of November and runs until January 7th.
And in France, one of the most beautiful castles in the country transformed into a winter wonderland. The rooms filled with Baroque art welcomed new fairy tale-inspired decorations.
NTD's international correspondent David Vivez takes us inside the castle, which holds a special place in France's history.
Once upon a time, there was a rich man who dreamed of living in the most beautiful estate in Europe.
He called upon the best painter, architect and gardener to build a castle that would be ahead of its time.
Nicolas Fouquet was this witty, intelligent, very ambitious collector, lover of the arts, young man that had a dream to have the most beautiful house ever.
Nicolas Fouquet, the Minister of Finances for Louis XIV, was the one who had the castle built. When the king visited the estate, he was so impressed that he hired the same team who built it to create the Palace of Versailles. Soon after, Fouquet was imprisoned on the king's orders. Some historians suggest this was out of jealousy. Alexandre de Voguier, inheritor of the castle, dedicated his life to preserving its history. He notes that many castles in Europe later drew inspiration from its design and architecture.
This place is very important in terms of architecture and garden design and decorative art as well, because it's the first time that all those art have been considered as a whole, as an ensemble, as we say in French. So what you have here is perfect proportions, harmony and audacity, bold.
In the winter, the castle undergoes a transformation. Thousands of lights illuminate the gardens, Christmas songs echo outdoors, and the interior is reimagined.
Bonjour! Hello, welcome to the castle of Vaux-le-Vicomte. Come with me, you will discover Christmas magic with fairy tales.
For 10 days, the castle closes as designers prepare its grand Christmas decorations. This winter, the theme is inspired by beloved childhood tales.
Each salon will be inspired by one of the tales we heard in our childhood. We will find Nutcracker's Little Red Riding Hood.
The gorgeous ceilings covered in divine scenes, as well as the sculptures of Fouquet and Louis XIV, will share the space with these fairy tales characters.
It's really like a fairy tale. It's really creative. I came to the castle with my grandchildren who don't live in France, and it's great to let them discover this.
While exploring, visitors can warm themselves by fires fueled by logs cut from the estate's own forest.
For a castle like this, we need 60 logs a day just for the ground floor, for the 6 fireplaces that feed it every day. We're back in the old times with fireplaces, indeed.
De Voguier notes that the idea for the Grand Christmas display was inspired by similar traditions in UK castles. It has become a massive success, with thousands of visitors arriving daily. The Great Christmas display will remain open until January 5th. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
The Shen Performing Arts 2025 World Tour has begun in Nagoya, Japan, and also right here in the U.S. in Atlanta, Georgia.
We hear from some fans about why they're excited to see the show this year.
Shen Performing Arts has started its 2025 World Tour with audience members around the world eagerly awaiting their return. Although the performance in Philadelphia is still more than 5 months away, people have already started booking their tickets.
I think I've been coming at least for 10 years. I never miss it. I always get the same 2 seats in the first row. Every time I come, it's just the same thing. It's just wonderful. I look forward to it every year. And as soon as the tickets come out, 6 months ago, I get them right away.
Beautiful. It's inspiring. The costumes, the skill of the dancers, it's second to none. I loved it. This is my 7th time. We've been coming for 7 years now. I have told many of my friends to go see this. If they don't like the show, I'll pay for their ticket. I've never had to pay for a ticket.
According to local Shen organizers, about 150,000 people have watched the performance in Philadelphia since 2007. State representatives that have watched Shen before are also looking forward to its return.
I remember that it told a very cultural and important story, and I think it's something that everybody should experience at least once, especially as we are a diverse nation and a diverse Commonwealth. I will do everything I possibly can to make sure that I go see it again. Absolutely.
If anybody hasn't seen it yet, make the time to see the show. You'll enjoy the cultural aspects of it, and you'll enjoy the messaging of it, and you'll feel really good after the show is over and completed. And if you have seen the show once, come back and see it again, because there's always changes to the show and to the performance, and you will love every second of it.
To honor last season's Shen performance, Delaware State Representative Lyndon Urick presented Shen with a certificate of recognition. commemorating the artist's commitment to preserving China's 5,000 years of rich traditional culture.
I would 110% recommend it. It was great to hear that there's a different show each and every year, so that it's not just one show and you've seen it all. It's a new performance and a new it's a history lesson each and every year under the principles of truth and kindness. Do the right thing. Look out for your family. I look forward to being here next year.
Shen Ying's mission is to revive traditional Chinese culture that was almost lost when communism took power in the country.
I was saddened to hear that they don't perform this in China. That was upsetting to me because it's so beautiful and it's so cultural, and it's a shame that their own country isn't allowing this to the public.
Shen Ying will start its performance in Pittsburgh on April 26th and Philadelphia on May 7th. NTD News, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
For round-the-clock original news coverage, watch us live at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app.
If you have any feedback, please email us, and NTD wishes you and your family a happy Christmas holiday. Thanks for watching.